Hi everyone, Russ here. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about smoke, where it's coming from, and after one of my prior videos the local forest supervisor reached out to me, and rightfully so, and says, you know, a lot of the smoke we're dealing with is coming from British Columbia fires. And I appreciate that because it's true, and some of the things that we were pointing out about firefighting and the stuff that's going on locally here in Northeast Washington and around the inland Northwest and the West Coast for that matter are important things to consider. But what Rodney brought up is that this is a bigger issue affecting all of us even across borders. The issue in British Columbia is a bit different. You see, their provincial government has managed their forests quite aggressively. They've got a robust forest industry that supports a lot of their rural towns and communities and provides a great bit of revenue for the province of BC and their communities. What's happened there that's different than in the federal forests of the US is that they have what's called a monoculture of lodgepole pine trees. Why is that important? It's important because when lodgepole pine become mature, they get stressed and they send out certain pheromones that attract the mountain pine beetle. It's a natural occurrence. It happens everywhere. I've heard people talk about the BC mountain pine beetle as an epidemic, and it is an epidemic, but it's not something we can just get rid of. There's also talk about the fact that the winters used to be colder and the pockets of pine beetle would be froze out and they would die off and become dormant for a while, and therefore the forests in BC wouldn't all be dead and dying. When I went up there in the 2005, 2006 era, there was a place that was killed by mountain pine beetle that was 4 times the forested area of Washington State. Washington State's the evergreen state, and it's very forested, so that gives you a perspective of the size. Now in 2018, we're seeing a lot of those forests ignite in wildfires, and they're really hard to control. It's my understanding that British Columbia managed their forests and their pine beetle epidemic by going after the forests that still had value, so they could still manage and pay for the extraction of that material. And they did that very well and aggressively. What I think the problem is now is some of those forests that were already too far gone, they don't have much value. When a tree dies, it cracks from the top and starts kind of spiraling, cracking all the way through. When you're trying to make lumber and you cut that, those cracks turn into cracks in the boards and they fall apart. So they're really not any good for lumber. Lumber and plywood and other solid wood products and engineered wood products are typically what we use to get the value from the forest. Wood chips and biomass is a byproduct of that primary product that's coming out of the forest. Because of that, it becomes difficult once your forests die to go out and harvest that material. There's some markets like log homes and others that are out there, but they're not huge markets. They can't take everything. They're affected by too much supply, and they don't have as much demand as they need to get the price they need. So what do we do? I don't know. The British Columbia government has to come up with some way of managing these forests and this fuel, breaking it up somehow, and trying to create some breaks in the fuel so we don't have these catastrophic wildfires that go for months and months and months. And now we've seen, I think it's 2 or 3 years of major fires in British Columbia. They do a really good job of fighting their fires and putting out their fires. However, right now they've got too much to handle, and I don't see an end in sight if we continue down this path. What I'm hoping for is some sort of solution that's created from these forests, whether it be biomass to energy and somehow ship the energy to where it can be used, but that's always tough because when you ship energy you lose a lot of the power that you created. But there's got to be some other way to take the value that's still out there in some of those forests, remove it so we don't have the fuel loads, so we don't have these smoky skies. Actually, behind me is north, and we're about 50 miles from the Canadian border. So it's hard to tell. We've got smoke still in the sky, although we can see blue sky and clouds, which is a wonderful thing to see since we haven't seen it for a few weeks. But I think we're also seeing smoke, and we'll continue to see smoke, because when you live in the inland or interior, if you're in BC, you recognize that valley to valley, ridge to ridge, you have different climates and different weather patterns. And even though we've got rain here, there is other areas up north that haven't got the rain yet, and vice versa. So I hope for rain, hope that we can get these things out. Hopefully we can come up with some solutions so this isn't a recurring theme for many, many years, because there's a tremendous amount of fuel, not only in the US, in our federal and state lands, and in some cases private lands that haven't been managed, but also in British Columbia. And I have confidence that the BC government will figure out a way to handle this, and their private sector will take it on. But it's a big challenge, and it's a cross-border challenge. So I want to send out my best wishes and hope for recovery for everybody that's dealing with the smoke. But in BC in particular, all of those that have maybe lost your homes or your communities have been negatively affected, I hope you get back to normal and have a bright, prosperous future that's safe coming up. Thanks everybody for watching.